All right, story number three. Story number three. Now, big shout out to Thought Crimes. I'm a big fan of Thought Crimes, their YouTube channel. P and Sin, Prince and Sin, Prince and Sincere. And I think they're based out of Atlanta from what I can tell. They really do incredible, deep dives and analysis on whatever topic they're talking about. They can talk about election cycles and politics, and, the information that they offer to the conversation is always like stuff that I'm not seeing anywhere else. You know what I mean? If they can talk about stuff that's happening in hip hop, same thing. Comic book stuff, graphic design things. They're just really talented, and I really, really appreciate their live streams and their content. I'll put a link to their channel here, and they have a Patreon too. So if you guys want to check that out, I highly suggest it, because these guys tend to lead a lot of conversations, like Thought Crimes and Showface, right? They tend to be ahead of where the conversation ends up being. Showface the mayor. And so I'm always checking out what they're talking about on a number of different topics, right? I find that those two channels in particular tend to be at least a day, sometimes a week ahead of what other people are going to talk about. Right. And so, and the Ville too, a big shout out to the Ville. The Ville does a lot of great work as well, but particularly Showface and Thought Crimes, I'm watching what they're talking about, because, they're just that on point. They're just that, they add that many gems in their conversations, and they did it again this week. Right. So we just did the story about Dedrick Williams. He was found guilty in the murder of XXX. His lawyer filing an appeal brief, looking for reasonable doubt for his client, because Drake was excluded from the previous trial. That just happened, and here comes Thought Crimes with Thought Crimes theory. This is a Thought Crimes theory, and so I think this is a very interesting one, because so many of the things that have come out in this battle this year seem to be proven more correct as the year goes on. Okay, right? I mean, I think once we saw Drake file those legal actions against UMG, that's the definition of spiraling. That's the definition of spiraling. No way to color that as being altruistic. That's one of the most selfish things I think I've ever seen artists do, regardless of the impact that it has, right? And so, after this legal filing, Thought Crimes did a lyric analysis comparing Peekaboo off GNX to Silent Hill off Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Now, I'm just going to play a quick few minutes of this and just react to it, because I just think that this is a very, very interesting theory. I don't think any of us would say this is 100% true. Right, this is one of those theory pieces. I do a lot of theory pieces on this channel. When I like a theory, I'm like, oh, this is an interesting theory. Let's put it out there. Let's see what people think about this theory. Okay, so here is Thought Crimes with a theory that connects Peekaboo to Silent Hill from Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. All right, let's see what they got.
This background is a background where they shouldn't say anything about this.
As they shouldn't, all right? But again, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. We love you guys so much. And, some people are like, hey, man, what you mean love, bro? Man, you don't know me. That's the point, brother and sister. But anyway, Sincere and I, we are back to, do a bit of a follow-up here concerning, we spoke this about on the Patreon, all right?
We have an exclusive Patreon stream that we want y'all all to head over to once you're done with this particular YouTube Live.
Right. Now, interestingly enough, though, as we was listening, we have a question here. Just have a question. Does Peekaboo lend a helping hand?
So what do we mean by this? We were, of course, having a great conversation with the Think Tank on Patreon, and Prince played Silent Hill featuring Kodak Black, and I heard on that track Kendrick Lamar say Peekaboo. So I was like, does Silent Hill has a correlation with the Peekaboo, the track that he came out with on G and X that we also played? And I felt that it did. And then we just had this conversation that, basically spiraled into something of talking about XXXtentacion and how give yourself, a brother helping hand. Right. Well, people remember before XXXtentacion died, he was given, he was doing the helping hand challenge.
The helping hand challenge, right? Okay, so that was one of the cool things about X. X was a troubled guy, right? He had violent history, he had some cases out there, but he was turning the corner, and he was trying to make life better for everyone really, particularly his audience. But one of the things he created was the Helping Hand Challenge. And so he would go to the store, get a bunch of goods, and he would give them out to people in the community. He would, one of the things he would do with his audience is he would go spend a day with a fan. He would go hang out with a fan all day. Just really super fan type stuff. But it was called the Helping Hand Challenge. Look at where they take this.
To help your fellow brother, man. So Kendrick basically had that at the beginning of the Peekaboo track. And so this actually is connected to the Big Steppers track, Silent Hill, where, again, Kendrick for a moment said Peekaboo. And Prince, if you want to, basically tell people for Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, the track.
Peekaboo can't hide behind your money, dog. I think that's the line from Silent Hill. Silent Hill. Peekaboo can't hide behind your money, dog. There's so many subs. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Big shout out to Professor Sky. He talks about how Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is actually having his moment this year. One second applause to Professor Sky.
Silent Hill that had featured Kodak and set that part up before we branch it back over to Peekaboo from the album GNX.
Okay, so, all right, from the album Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, the track is called Silent Hill. Now, I recall listening to the track at the time, and based on what Kendrick Lamar's energy was leading up to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and then I said, well, maybe there's some, imperfections going on that he wanted to highlight with the likes of Kodak Black, because any one of those stories from those tracks with the likes of Kodak Black could be applied to him. But it just kept I said, I don't know what's going on. And then as we make our way through the battle with Euphoria, I went back and I was like, man, you know what? Let me go back and listen to that track one more time, because if you guys recall, let's go back to it. And the track is called Silent Hill. And keep this in mind. There was a campaign against not Silent Hill. There was a campaign against Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Okay. On Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick Lamar features Kodak Black on a track called Silent Hill. All right. Now, people were laughing. Some folks that were pro-Drake, pro-Aubrey, were laughing, saying, man, Kodak Black smoked Kendrick on the track, this, that, and the third. And I said, fine, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there are a couple bars from Kendrick's behalf that does push everything forward to what we ended up seeing happen.
So right here it says, know the results, the ballot is in, man. I'm about to boom again. You funny, dog. Peekaboo can't hide behind your money, dog. A week or two, I meditate for my swerve, swerve, swerve. 1 second applause to my rendition of Silent Hill.
Happening during the battle. So you have here on Silent Hill, this is Kendrick parts. He says, know the results, the ballot is in. He says, I'm about to boom again, all right? He says, you funny dog, Peekaboo, can't hide behind your money, dog, all right? And he says, a week or two, I meditate on running loss. Now.
And that's very important because this connects to me to the song Peekaboo. But let's continue to walk it down before we get there.
All right, so now on the opening track of Peekaboo, he does sample the Helping Hand. And if you go back to the likes of course, XXX, Jase Onfroy, he had started the Helping Hand Challenge. Now, if you guys recall, Drake has been on this said gangster tour ever since the passing of this man up here on the screen.
Yeah, he's been doing his own version of Test My Gangster.
Lord have mercy.
Test My Gangster.
No, you said it right, saying guess.
See, that's interesting too, right? They peg this situation as being when Drake made a turn to the dark side or mob ties or whatever. You know what I mean? They're pegged this to when the time period where we started seeing super aggressive gangster Drake. Right, and so, and so this is a seminal time period, if that is the case, or from that angle, this is a very seminal time period for where Drake's career has taken him since.
Guess my gangster. Guess my gangster.
Well, Addie said I don't get the correlation. Well, okay, on Silent Hill, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, you have spiritually the Christ consciousness.
Before we get into this,
go ahead.
All right, sorry about that. Oh, that's the part we left out. Kodak Black is featured on Silent Hill with Kendrick Lamar. He ended up having a run-in with one of XXXtentacion's killers. They had a conversation. Now, the track that Kodak Black is featured on with Kendrick Lamar is talking about hiding behind your money. and he's talking about Peekaboo. You know, basically we see what's going on because there are subliminals layered on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
Pretty much he's saying on Silent Hill, Peekaboo, I know what you did, Drake. And I have Kodak Black on the same album that in the track Silent Hill, whereas Prince stated he met up when Kodak was in prison. He crossed paths with the person who murdered XXXtentacion.
Now, here's the thing about it, okay? The thing is this. What's going on, if you guys have not been paying attention, y'all saw recently with the petition for UMG, okay? Now, what is the guy saying? Mr. Williams, I believe his name is. He wants his evidence fully introduced because even his own attorney feels he did not get a fair shake. And of all the witnesses, again, there's depositions, there's situations where, you know, again, people aren't citizens of Florida or whatever the case is, so there's ways you got to move around that. But he's saying here, hold on now. I had Drake up on that list, and the judge struck him off the list.
Which is why it's important when you listen to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, you're getting Christ consciousness from Kendrick Lamar spiritually. Like even on Silent Hill, when he said Peekaboo to Drake, pretty much you're hiding behind your power and your money, but you're not basically looking at the damage that you allegedly done in other people's lives. And in particular for this track, we're talking about with XXXtentacion. When you go to G and X, it's a transformation where Kendrick is basically the boogeyman. So we go from Christ consciousness on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. We talk about Christ consciousness, meditation, the dark night of the soul, going through the shadow self, and also the shadow self of the culture, right? Having the heart part 5. Then on GNX, the boogeyman is fully out, where at the beginning the sample says, give, you know, your brother a helping hand. Helping hand is what XXXtentacion was doing. Now you have a full track called Peekaboo, where Kendrick Lamar is the boogeyman, and he's like, Peekaboo, nigga. Now it's about to get heated up. This is why it makes sense when Hitta was in our chat in the live that we did not too long ago. Hitta said, Dark Carnage, I gotta watch and wait. A lot of big things is gonna happen. And when you hear Peekaboo on GNX, like, people are gonna give GNX album more and more and more credit as other things unfold. But the Peekaboo track in and of itself is a continuation to the track Silent Hill, and that sample is paying homage to XXXtentacion.
It's a helping hand challenge.
The helping hand challenge, which
remember Drake trolled.
He trolled
him with the God's plan,
and that's why Kendrick is trolling him.
So listen, folks, just think about that, right?
So God's plan. There's a theory out there that God's plan is really a diss to X, and it's trolling him because the God's plan video is the helping hand challenge. Essentially, it's Drake going down to South Florida, giving out $1 million basically to a bunch of different people and offering a helping hand. They're connecting here is the sample on, if I believe I'm not mistaken, on Silent Hill has helping hand in it. That also has a Peekaboo reference, which is on a song that's on GNX, right? Yo, I mean, this is all speculative, of course. You know, this is just, you know, one of the things that has happened that's I just find to be a lot of fun personally is, you know, thinking about what all these rhymes mean or don't mean, right? And so I don't feel comfortable saying that this is what Drake was doing on God's Plan 100%. Nor do I feel comfortable saying this is what Kendrick is doing with Peekaboo and Silent Hill 100% either. But I thought this was a very interesting theory that's being posited here by Thought Crimes. And they continue. I'll put the link in here so you can really watch where they go with it, because this is sort of the macro high-level connections to it. If you get to the lyrics in there, in Peekaboo, you know, put 80 on your head like a Raptors game, I think, or like a Kobe game when he put 81 on the head against the Toronto Raptors. There's a few other illusions that are out there. And so I'm going to put a link in here. You can check out this full conversation with P and Sin, Prince, and Sincere at Thought Crimes. I'm a big fan of their channel, big fan of what they got going on. And so, and this was ironic, right? Because, you know, Dedrick Williams' lawyer just filed an appeal to look at this again. And last week, Drake filed 2 legal actions against UMG. And so now people are looking more into rumor. I've even Hot New Hip Hop referenced it in the previous block. Into rumors and allegations that Drake had something to do with XXXtentacion. One thing that DeVille was pointing out yesterday, I was catching his live stream, and the tour that Drake went on in Europe was called the Assassination Vacation and had palm trees in the crosshairs around it. Now, I have no idea if any of that stuff, I'm not saying by any means that, these are things that are directly connected to this situation outside of, things that fans or even people who aren't fans are putting in Drake's direction. I'm definitely not saying that. But this is what happens, right? I mean, new Kendrick drops, new music drops. People start trying to decipher what it means. And, you have big macro situations like the UMG lawsuit and Dietrich Williams' lawyer filing an appeal. Now you're in the legal realm. So people are taking a look at these rap lyrics. And I've never been an advocate for people bringing lyrics in court. Never been an advocate for that. And it's because you never know, truthfully, the motivations. Just because someone says something in a song or on the internet doesn't necessarily make it true. Right? I personally am against that entire the way the legal system leverages rap lyrics. I mean, it's the same thing as especially in the case of Young Thug. They were getting the lyrics wrong in court, you know what I mean? But, when, since we do have a system that embraces rap lyrics as part of evidence, this is the kind of thing that does happen. And take a look at their theory is Kendrick trolling Drake on Peekaboo and Silent Hill around XXX in one way, shape, or form. The big one that they point out in here that just blew my mind was when Euphoria dropped. It was 17 days after Push-Ups, if I'm not mistaken. And XXXtentacion had an album called 17. Now, that could be a reach. It could be one of those things that people see a whole lot into. But this is where the conversation is following Dietrich Williams, who's been found guilty of unaliving XXX. His lawyer filing this appeal. So this is where the conversation is. Take a look at Thought Crime's breakdown of these two songs. This is a theory piece. I enjoy their content. And so give them a subscribe. It's definitely worth your time. And let me know what you think about all of this. My name is Justin Hunt. Like, subscribe to the channel. Follow at The Company Man on everything. It's all happening.
Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom bapping in. Systematical culture views, it's radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dapping it. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, dog. You don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening.